Hey everybody, it's Mr. Sunny with Magic Book University, and thank you for joining us on another episode of the Role Models Podcast. The Role Models Podcast is when we invite super successful people, such as the person that we have on today with us, to really share their story and share their journey on how they became who they are today. Today I have Sean Patel. Dr. Sean Patel, are you?
Dr. Sean Patel is official. I'm still a resident physician, but I have my medical degree, so I guess you can say doctor. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we have Dr. Sean Patel on with us today. He grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada, and went to one of the worst schools in the country. And I looked it up online, and I was looking up the statistics on it, and it's pretty heartbreaking to see what a lot of kids in that area went through. And he got a perfect score on his SAT. He got a perfect 2,400 out of 2,400. He won $250,000 in scholarships from all over the country. And you were the White House Scholarship as well. And you met the president?
Yeah, the White House Scholars Program. I got to meet the president, who at the time was George Bush. So it wasn't Barack Obama. I'm sort of dating myself, but yeah.
Awesome. And he went to the University of Southern California, got your medical degree, and also went to Yale University. That's where you got your MBA. And then in 2016, I still remember this day, is sitting with my parents watching Shark Tank, and Sean Patel comes on to pitch his Prep Expert SAT program, where he partnered with Mark Cuban, and now he has one of the best SAT prep programs in the country. And I believe it's the #1 SAT prep program in the country, where I read somewhere, but which is really, really awesome. And you've accomplished so much. And I think you are the perfect person to be a role model for not just our students, also for me, and everybody else that watches this. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Sunny, or should I say Mr. Sunny, for having me.
Sunny, that's fine.
Me on the Role Models Podcast. I'm excited to be on, share some tips with kids watching and their parents. You do your research. Thank you for the amazing introduction. Just to give people, that was like, it sounds like I've done a lot, but really I'm an entrepreneur. I started this test prep program, and I'm also a physician though. So I am a dermatology resident physician at Temple University Hospital, and so I do both, and people often ask me how I do both, and I'm sure we'll get into that in the podcast. Yeah, I'm both a doctor and an entrepreneur, so for kids out there wanting to do two careers, it is possible, and we could certainly dive deeper into that. Yeah,
absolutely. So Sean, tell us about how you really got started with this Prep Expert program.
Yeah, so the Prep Expert SAT program, that's what you said, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so essentially what we offer are 6-week online classes. That's our flagship program, where we take students who are looking to prepare for the SAT or the ACT, and we put them into a virtual online class with top-notch instructors who have scored in the 99th percentile on the exams, and we teach them 100 strategies that I developed for the SAT and the ACT to ace these exams. Now, after a student goes through one of our courses on the SAT, they typically will improve about 200 points to their SAT scores. We've had students improve as much as 600 points and win like millions of dollars in scholarships and get into great universities. And then ACT, it's 4 points typically. But yeah, it's a program I developed back when I was in college, after I'd gotten a perfect SAT score myself. And what I wanted to do was help other students improve their test scores and improve their SAT scores, and that's really why I built the program.
So what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced as a kid growing up?
Yeah, so some of the biggest challenges, I think, like maybe many of the kids that are watching this podcast was, I had immigrant parents from India who didn't know a lot about the college admissions process. For me, I also went to urban public schools in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Las Vegas, Nevada has some of the worst public schools in the nation, as you brought up in the beginning. So not really knowing how to navigate the college admissions process, not knowing the value of the SAT or the ACT. I had to learn a lot on my own because I didn't have parents who knew that much about it, and I didn't have admissions counselors at school because our schools were so bad that knew much about it. So I had to learn a lot of it on my own. And that's why I self-studied for the SAT so much, because I learned that I wanted to do a medical program that required very high SAT scores. And when I got my first SAT score, I was around average. I mean, I wasn't terrible, but I wasn't anything superstar like. And that's when I locked myself in the library over a summer between junior and senior year of high school. And I spent hundreds of hours studying for the test, and I was able to improve my score 640 points to get a perfect SAT score. And that changed my life with all the scholarships, the admission to the great universities, getting to meet the president. And because of that experience, I wanted to help change other students' lives through their test scores.
That's such an immense accomplishment to be able to just study nonstop. I mean, that must have taken some serious levels of self-discipline to be able to do that. And like, I know we talked about this a little bit before on our last call, was that self-control and self-discipline are some of the biggest predictors of success ever, right? Like, how did that really influence you to become the person that you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what was funny is when I was the kids' age that are probably watching this podcast is, just like the typical Indian parent that I had, they expected straight A's. And, I was the typical like kid who loved video games and basketball and all of that. And so I realized around when I was 10 years old, like if I just started getting A's in school, my parents would leave me alone. But if I got a B or like a C or like a bad grade, I'd have to hear an earful, and I'd have to like do all this extra work that my parents would give me. So like I learned pretty early on that if I just got A's, like I got to do what I want. Like I got to play as many video games I wanted to and all of that. So early on, I started learning about self-control because I just had to get really good grades. And then I came across later on in life that, self-control is really so important. It's the number one predictor to success. Like there's a famous Stanford marshmallow experiment that we talked about previously, which essentially they put these 5-year-old kids in a room and they put one marshmallow in front of them. And they said, to the children, you could either eat this one marshmallow right now, or if you have enough self-control, if you have enough self-discipline, if you can delay your gratification for 15 minutes and sit in this room with this one marshmallow, we'll give you 2 marshmallows. So basically, they'll reward your self-control, your self-discipline. You'll get double the marshmallows if you can just sit here and not eat the marshmallow. Only about 1/3 of the students out of the like 500 students that they tested had enough self-control to not eat that second or the marshmallow immediately. Yeah. But what they found was of those 1/3 of the students that had self-control like naturally, those students were more successful in every aspect of life. They got higher SAT scores, they got higher salaries, they were more popular, they had better careers, they had fewer drug and alcohol problems later on in life. So like what it proved was the ability to have self-control is going to be a great predictor to your success. Now for students watching this, I think it's more important than ever to learn self-control because they have so many distractions, right? You think about distractions with television, Netflix, YouTube, social media, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. I mean, you and I didn't have that growing up when we were 10 years old. Yeah. And so like the kids today have to practice even more self-control to not be distracted by all these things in order to become successful in life.
Yeah. what do you think that it is that's like exactly and precisely about self-control that is a major predictor of success?
Yeah.
Like, how did that play a role in your life? And how is self-control and self-discipline? Because we talk about this in the classroom all the time. Like, we're always discussing this exact topic. But
Yeah.
how do you feel that self-control has played such a huge part in your life?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back a little bit to what I was talking about with being able to sit in the library for 8 hours at a time with an SAT book, right? Like, how many kids today could still do that, right? It's like I would literally sit there and go to the library when it opened at 9 a.m. and I could sometimes stay there till 6 p.m., 8 p.m. at night, literally all day, just get a lunch in between at some point, and I would just be with my books. I wouldn't have my cell phone out. I wouldn't be, I mean, there wasn't even Facebook or anything like that.
It was nice.
Yeah. And, I didn't have, I wasn't watching TV. So like, to students today, I think it still plays a role in my life. I'm able to be much more productive, much more focused when when I have enough self-control to put my cell phone away, to put the Facebook, the Instagram away. And so I think it's really what it is about self-control is you're able to focus in on the task at hand and really, like, for kids it's to study, right? Like, really be able to study and focus on what you're learning, and really focus for hours at a time. Now, kids might be like, wow, that's a lot to study for hours at a time. Now, I'm not saying don't take breaks. Breaks are very important too, to, like, I don't think anyone can study for 10 hours with no breaks. Like, take 10-minute breaks every hour to take a snack break, water break, whatever it may be. But self-control is really this discipline you learn to, I think when you're a kid, you learn self-control. Like, if you have good self-control, you can study well. When you become an adult, and in my position as an entrepreneur, you're able to do a lot of work production, right? So like in your career, you're able to, whether it's writing items or doing business or doing emails or whatever it may be, like being able to manage your time to get the most amount of work or production through having a lot of self-control. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. I think that's definitely really, really important for our students to hear, and I'm really happy that you said that. Now, you really mentioned with self-control takes a lot of focus, being able to sit there for extended periods of times. Yes, taking your breaks, like get up, walk around, stretch your legs, get a drink of water, eat something, all that stuff is great. But do you feel, I think a lot of times kids feel like they just can't do it. Like they just can't sit down, take a book out, and just sit there and read. And I think a lot of it really comes from them having this fixed mindset that they just believe that since they don't have this skill of focus right now, like it'll never come. Just like a lot of students and a lot of people, I know I definitely said this when I was a kid that like I'm just not a math person, and me saying that over and over and over and over and over again to myself really started to program me into that direction of not being a math person.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you stand on, do you feel that like focus is something that you're just somehow mystically born with, or is it like something that's like built over time and something that's fostered through consistent work?
Yeah, so there's this famous book by this author, Malcolm Gladwell, called Outliers. Uh, and he talks about the 10,000 hour rule. And I think it's important for kids to hear this because what he says is that to become a master at anything, it takes 10,000 hours of practice. So, for example, let me use someone that maybe kids would know. LeBron James, right? LeBron James is a master at basketball, but I'm sure when he was 4 or 5 years old, he wasn't a master at basketball. He wasn't the best basketball player, but he probably played hours and hours and hours of basketball, 10,000 hours over time to become this great basketball player. So it's the same thing with self-control. It's the same thing with studying. It's the same thing with anything. Like for studying, for example, no one is good at studying or reading when they first start, especially kids, right? You're not going to be good at it right away. What you need to do is practice it like a sport. right, is you have to continue to practice studying, practice focusing, and you have to do the 10,000 hours, right? Like kids watching this may want to be just as good at studying or just as good at doing work as me and you, but the problem is we've had 10,000 hours to practice over the years. So they can't be as good as us until they put in that practice to become masters, right?
Mhm.
Whatever the student thinks that they aren't good at now, just know that you have to be willing to put in the time and effort to practice and become good at it. Whether it's basketball to become a great basketball player like LeBron James, or it's studying to become a great student. And that's really what I think the kids should be focusing on as students at your university or at school, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really happy that you said that. I was just on another call earlier this week, and we were talking about one of the same similar concepts, and we were talking about dreaming big and the importance of dreaming big. And as an entrepreneur, as a student, as somebody that just wants to do something bigger than themselves, it's very important to dream big. And especially working with kids, I've just like myself I am a giant kid, and like working with these kids has like really helped me grow my mindset and think in more imaginative ways, because kids think in the most imaginative ways. I mean, they pull like hats out of rabbits, like it's not the other way around for them. And they're so great at that, and they're so great about thinking big and imagining different things that they want to accomplish with their lives, and it's so amazing to see that. But the major thing that's missing is those 10,000 hours, right? Like if you don't put in the work behind it, if you're not like every day grinding away with this singular focus of like, this is what I want to accomplish, you're really not going to accomplish anything. You could dream as much as you want, but you just don't put in the hours. If you don't put in the work, if you don't put in the focus, that self discipline and self control, you're really not going to go anywhere. So I'm really happy that you said that, because it makes a lot of sense, and it's something that I think kids and parents and all of us just really need to hear more often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no such thing as an overnight success, right? A lot of people might look at successful people and say, I want that, but then they're not willing to put in the 10,000 hours to get there, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the difference between people that become successful and people that don't. For kids out there, it's like, are you willing to work and put in the effort and not expect it to happen overnight? Know that there's going to be a lot of nights that you work really hard and you're going to feel like quitting, but are you going to keep going or are you going to quit? And that's your decision. But hopefully you make the decision to keep going, keep practicing and getting better.
Absolutely. So you're an entrepreneur, and you're also in your residency right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a dermatologist. And you did bring this up earlier, and it's my biggest question is how do you balance both? Like that, those are such, I don't want to say different, but those are so vastly huge things that you're doing at the same time, and you're becoming successful in both or more successful in both. And it's just inspiring to see that. So how are you able to manage balancing your time?
Yeah, so that's another really important skill that kids need to learn is time management, right? So time management is super, super important. I'm not going to say I'm a master at it, but I've become pretty good at it over the years. So just to give you an idea of my typical day, I'll wake up at 7 a.m. I'll go to my dermatology clinic and I see patients from 8 a.m. to 4 or 5 p.m. I then go home. I actually, to become even more efficient, I actually work out during lunchtime so that I don't do that in the evening, because in the evening I come home, I eat dinner at 5:36, and then might take half an hour break, but by 7 p.m. to 10, 11 p.m. at night, I'm working on my prep expert company. And so a lot of times you've probably seen emails coming in from me at 10 p.m. at night, and people are like, what's this guy doing emailing? But I'll work after hours. And then the other thing I'll do is I have Saturdays and Sundays off. I'll treat them like work days. I don't take I mean, I do take weekends off, don't get me wrong, but if I need to work, I call them work weekends. And so I'll work from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday and Sunday and put in an extra 20 hours on the weekends if I need an important project to get done at my company, Prep Expert. And so working after hours, working on weekends is where I find the time. And then on top of that, I mean, I think, I think there's two phases to a business. One is when you're in the build out phase, when you're building the business yourself. And I was in that phase for a long time. And, I would do it in the summers. I would do it during business school instead of doing an internship. I did in the summer. So I would work 80 to 100-hour weeks on the business. And I think every entrepreneur or business needs that for a certain period of time, where the founder is working on the business 80 to 100 hour, like 80-hour work weeks, seriously, for many weeks, months, sometimes years, right? But eventually you can start hiring people you trust. And that's the second phase, hiring people you trust to take over some of the day-to-day operations. So for me, I'm actually at my Las Vegas office. I have 10 full-time employees here at the office that run the customer service, that run the sales, the operations, that do a lot of the teaching, the marketing. And so you have to be able to hire people you trust. And, we talked a little bit about this. Eventually you can start making money in your sleep because you have started a business that generates you income because you have people that work for you and that you trust. And so I can't take all the credit for Prep Expert. I think I have great employees that help run the day-to-day operations. And that's really what kids should aspire to, I think, do is, it would be great if you want to be an entrepreneur, but you don't want to work 80 hours a week for the rest of your life. You want to eventually be able to hire employees that do a great job for you, and you're generating income even when you're not working. And so making money in your sleep is something that I think a lot of kids should look to do as entrepreneurs. It's not easy. Like I said, you still have to, there's no getting past the 80-hour work weeks that you have to put in as an entrepreneur when you're first building your business.
Yeah, definitely. And so you recently published a book with Mark Cuban, correct, on kids entrepreneurship. So talk to me a little bit about that. Tell me about what that book is, so that way I can in turn tell my students, or we could just tell our students about it right now, and hopefully they go and get it and check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I authored a book called Kids Startup with billionaire Mark Cuban. He's my business partner and a shark on Shark Tank, which was a really cool opportunity. And the idea behind the book was really to inspire entrepreneurship in kids, because when you and I were growing up, Sonny, when people asked us, what do you want to be when you grow up? We would always say things like doctor, lawyer, engineer, pharmacist. Those were kind of the options, right? And so what this book is really intended to do is to inspire that kids start saying entrepreneur to that question. Like entrepreneurship is a career. I want to inspire kids to become entrepreneurs. And so does Mark Cuban. And that's really the reason we wrote the book, is to talk about that, to talk about entrepreneurship, to talk about how to start a business, how to make money. Because we think that if you start early with starting little businesses, even if it's a lemonade stand or a car wash or selling socks, there's all kinds of business ideas we share in the book. But for kids, if you start early, I think that teaches you a lot about business. It teaches you about making money, teaches you about even teaches you about self-control, because you've got to have self-control to start a business as a kid, rather than, it's hard to say no to video games and say, no, I'm going to go and start this lemonade stand, and so yeah, I think it teaches a lot of great values, hard work, discipline. So I encourage we encourage all kids to start businesses when they're young, to get familiar with entrepreneurship, so that I think kids, I used to sell Pokemon cards when I was in elementary school. I think kids that have that entrepreneurial spirit are more likely to become successful entrepreneurs later on in life. I don't know if you have that experience, if you ever sold little things when you were a kid or did anything like that.
Yeah. My dad used to own a video store when I was younger, and he would have like any of the videos that kind of just went out of cycle or out of stream from the store, because we didn't have Netflix when we were kids. We had a VHS player, and you had to like open up the thing and then like blow it out and then pop those things in there. So anytime I would sell like VHS tapes at garage sales and those types of things. And I think the major thing that really stood out for me, especially with doing this is something that I love doing. Like, I don't think of this as work, and I'm sure you don't think of parts of Prep Expert or Prep Expert as a whole as work, because that's something that you genuinely love doing. This Prep Expert was born out of a need that you had, right? Like, and this was born, Magic Book was born out of a need that I had. I went to different learning centers when I was a kid and grew up with that strong Indian mentality of like education and learning and all that stuff. And to be able to have a fun and engaging program for kids to really be a part of is something that this is what I love doing. And I think that's really important. But this isn't about me, it's about you. So tell me about what's another chapter that you really, really enjoy from your book. So we talked about the chapter of making money in your sleep. That's one chapter from the book. Mm-hmm. What's your other favorite chapter?
My other favorite chapter from the book is when I teach students what kind of business to start, because, everyone asks like, well, what kind of business should I start, right? And the answer to that question is do what you know. So what I mean by that is don't just go and start like an app or go start, the next artificial intelligence business, because that's what's cool to start, right? What I mean by do what you know is that, billionaire Warren Buffett, like one of the most successful investors of all time, he says he only invests in things that stay within the realms of what he knows. And if he invests in something he doesn't understand or doesn't know, he fails. And it's the same thing with entrepreneurship. So what that means to kids is you want to start a business in something that you understand or know really well. So, if you try to start a business, something you don't understand or you don't know or you're not that familiar with, you've already like lost the race before you even started. So for kids, let's say that a kid is really, really good with tech. Like, you're just like the go-to tech person. You're fixing everyone's iPads. You're helping your parents with their iPhones, or you're fixing their laptops and all that, right? So then it's like, okay, what kind of business should you start? Maybe you should start a senior tech help business, right? Like you already are really good at tech. You could help seniors in your community or adults in your community that need some literacy on, maybe they need help on how to use the technology, maybe they need help on how to use Facebook or the social media, and you can coach them and teach them, etc. Right? So there's the business. Like you do what you know, and it's kind of like what you just talked about, what you're passionate about and what you love to do, and you'll be much more likely and successful if you start a business in that. So for me, I really knew the SAT well. I got a perfect score on it. I studied hundreds of hours for it. So that's my business, For you, like you said, you attended a lot of learning centers, worked at a lot of learning centers, and you understood it really well. So you do what you have expertise in. And it almost goes back to that 10,000 hours. If you put in 10,000 hours to really know and understand a certain topic, you're going to be much more likely to be a successful entrepreneur in that space, right? It's a lot of the reason that I'm doing dermatology residency is to get that 10,000 hours of experience so that I can eventually start a skincare company or a cosmetics line, or start different dermatology practices, or some kind of derm tech company. But I'm not starting the business before I understand it. Does that make sense? So like I want to understand everything, do what I know. I need to know it first before I can start the business. So for kids, looking to start business, I'm not saying they need 10,000 hours before they start their business, because obviously they're kids. But at least do something that you really understand or you really know. And I think Like maybe they're really into cars and they can start a business there. Maybe they're really into sports. They can start a business where they're selling matching colored socks for sporting events at high schools. Like there's all kinds of stuff that they could do, but do it within the realms of what they know, and don't try to start a business in something you don't know.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important because there's always new fads that are coming up constantly. Like every single week, there's a new thing to be a part of, or like, and then everybody jumps onto that. And really, the only people that last in that fad are the people that either created it or people that actually have an interest and strong passion for whatever is going on, and then continue way past when that fad has dropped off and then build it into something bigger. And I really like that you said that, like, it's if you have an interest in, say, like basketball or sports or cars, to start a business within your own realm of understanding, because that's where your heart lies. Like that's where the most intellectually, and also where you have the most feeling for to continue to push you through. It as an entrepreneur, and I've experienced this as well, that like stuff gets hard. Like nothing is easy.
Yeah.
It's not like one day you just wake up and you're like, oh, I got $1 million in my pocket. Like it doesn't work that way. There's so much trial and error and disagreements and a whole bunch of other stuff that goes into it, and then continuously just pushing on and working through and not giving up is really the big determiner of success.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So Sean, I have a question for you. Imagine this, that you are 99 years old and you are on your deathbed, like you're about to go pass on tomorrow, like tonight is your last night. And when you pass on, everything that you have accomplished up until that point will disappear forever. So prep expert, gone. Any books or advancements in dermatology that you've published, your kid entrepreneur books, all that stuff, gone, never happened.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do pass on, you're able to pass on one truth to the rest of the world, to stand as a truth that will stand forever. What would that truth be?
What would that truth be? I think that truth would be listen to your parents. That's and I think that goes a long way. I think I'm credited for a lot of success, but most of my success came from just listening to my parents. I had a rule growing up that like I could argue and disagree with my parents a lot. But for some reason, I don't know why I made this decision, but I was probably 10 years old. I was like, on the big things, I'll probably always listen to my parents. And I know there's a lot of rebellion phase that goes on as you grow up, as a teenager and all that. But at the end of the day, I would always listen to my parents when it came to what schools I should consider, what careers I should consider, what I should do next, everything. I would usually listen to my parents. And I encourage students out there and kids out there to really listen to their parents, because your parents, I know it's almost fun to argue with them or go against what they say. And kids like doing that, and I liked doing that too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you should know as a kid, and I'm coming from an outside perspective, is that your parents are almost the only people in the world that only want good for you, and they don't want anything bad for you. And so to take their advice and listen, as they grow up, they'll stumble. But on the big things, try to listen to your parents as much as you can, because I really believe that most people's parents, 99% of people's parents, are really looking out in their best interests and want nothing but good things to happen for their children. So my truth is, listen to your parents, and that will usually lead to lots of success and happiness.
Awesome. Well, Sean, thank you so much for coming onto the Role Models podcast. It was really, really nice having you here. I'm really happy that we got to discuss a lot really about entrepreneurship and how kids can really take their own self-discipline, self-control, and their own inner self-confidence to the next level. And I'm really happy that we spoke about a lot during this time, right? We talked about like how you grew up. We talked about what it really takes to become successful, that you need to put in that amount of work. And I'm really, really happy that you said that you need to listen to your parents because, growing up, I didn't, for a lot of things. And then eventually, as I grew up and I started learning that, my parents are going to be the only people that want, like you said, nothing else. Like your parents don't want anything from you. They just want you to be successful. They want you to be happy and to literally live your best life. And they're not going to take anything from you either.
Yeah.
They're going to be the only ones to really support you through it all.
Mm-hmm.
You're not really like exchanging equity or anything for your parents. It's just love.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really happy that you said that because a lot of kids can really learn from someone like you. So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was a privilege to speak about entrepreneurship, and I hope kids took some good lessons today.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, Sean, thank you so much for coming on. It was really nice having you.
All right. Thanks, Sonny.